I rise to speak about the situation that the United States is facing regarding the new terrorist threat from the new caliphate, so-called caliphate state of ISIS. The President has announced that tomorrow he will address the American people and explain what he proposes to do about this new situation that faces us, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, otherwise called ISIS or IS. We are at a critical moment, facing a serious danger, and now is the time to act together. Effective action to be effective, needs our united support, and that's why the President's address tomorrow is so important. I was alarmed by his admission in a press conference 10 days ago that he had no strategic policy in mind. So I welcome this opportunity now to learn what this strategy is, and I truly hope that it will be articulated fully and completely with clarity so that not only the American people, but their representatives here in the House and the Senate know exactly what the President intends on doing and proposing. The unspeakable depravities committed by ISIS seem to have no limits. The alarm bells have become louder as ISIS henchmen continue their beheadings and their brutality and their barbarism. One of the most acute dangers ISIS poses is the wide scope of their ambitions. First Syria, then Iraq, now Lebanon, later possibly Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and others in their target sites. ISIS is now widely and correctly judged to be the largest, best organized, best financed, most capable, and most ambitious terrorist organization in history. So when the President explains his plan to degrade and defeat ISIS, I plan to carefully examine it, to look for what I believe are the essential elements and hallmarks that are necessary for us to succeed. Those are determination, it's courage, it's resources to enact the plan, it's a vision for where we want to go, a goal that we want to achieve, clearly outlined, and a realism that we can be successful. I will support that request by the President, whatever it might be, but I will support that if I can determine that the task of defending our nation and degrading and defeating ISIS is clearly laid out before us in terms of how we will accomplish this. Now, when I first addressed this subject last month, I outlined 5 areas in which I believed urgent action was required, and I hope the President's plan will incorporate or at least include these 5 areas. First, as I've just said, I called for the Obama administration to articulate their own plan to confront ISIS and protect America. I trust that this will happen tomorrow. Secondly, I called for a vigorous, concerted push with Islamic states and communities to stand up to this outrageous ISIS perversion of their religion and their culture. We haven't seen outrage in the region from those moderate, the leadership, the political, as well as the people just simply who see this action of ISIS as a perversion of their religion and as destructive and brutal as it is. Where have they been? And it's time they step up. And so I believe we must make a concerted push with Islamic states and communities to stand up to this outrage that is taking place. We should work with all political and religious authorities to speak out about how their faith and their culture is being co-opted and perverted by these ISIS criminals. We then must press them to take effective action to undercut the popular, political, and economic support that ISIS extremists are getting. Genuine Muslim leaders, imams, and others need to take center stage to discredit the violent radicals and weaken their outreach and recruitment among Muslim youth. Third, last month I called for much greater security assistance for our potential partners in this fight against ISIS. The U.S. should move quickly to provide arms, training, and other requested assistance to Iraqi Kurdistan's Peshmerga forces, to other states that need the support, have requested the support, and will work with us to address this challenge. We need to find effective ways to support and directly arm the reliable, vetted Sunni tribes and Sunni leaders in Iraq who are essential partners in combating this ISIS extremism and that ultimately are in Sunni Islam's interest and greatest threat. Fourth, it's clear that ISIS cannot be defeated without our participation, and therefore I believe our current bombing campaign against ISIS targets should be continued and expanded to include ISIS bases in Syria. If we learned anything from the wars in Vietnam, Korea, and Serbia, and our experience along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, we have learned that the futility of attacking military forces that have safe haven bases just across the border or nearby leads to less than success, but leads to potential defeat. And fifth and lastly, I believe we need to address new dangers to our homeland by reassessing border security and determining whether it can be improved to address the threat of foreign fighters returning to the United States. The threat of Western, homegrown, radical, and violent jihadist terrorists is real and it's growing. We know that. ISIS boasts that they have trained and motivated fighters that are already embedded in many countries throughout the world, and that they have their sights trained on the United States and Europe. There's no reason to disbelieve them. So we must respond to this threat to our country in every possible way. Now, one effective step here is to reevaluate our entry procedures, including the visa waiver program. I know this will be controversial. I know that countries that have been loyal allies will raise alarms, but we have to understand that we need to conduct a thorough candidate assessment of how this visa waiver program affects our national security interests and whether there are changes to the program that would enhance our security. Similar reviews of our refugee and asylum policies are also necessary. As a ranking member of the Homeland Security Appropriations Committee and a member of the Intelligence Committee, I will seek such an assessment and pursue legislation that is responsive to the new danger that we face. In conclusion, Mr. President, when President Obama unveils his strategy to defeat ISIS, not manage ISIS, not contain ISIS, but to defeat ISIS, I'm hopeful that his presentation will include at least the essential elements that I talked about: clarity and coherence, sound diplomacy to bring Muslim nations and communities into firm opposition to ISIS extremism, appropriate expanded security assistance to partners in the struggle, enhanced military action to include Syria, and greater attention to border security. If what the President says tomorrow includes these elements, and hopefully more, then I will look very carefully as to how I can support the President and his strategy and encourage my colleagues to do the same, because I believe it's essential that to succeed against this threat, we need to speak with one voice. We need to be united as Americans, as a Congress, and as Americans throughout the country in terms of what we need to do, the nature of the threat, what we need to do to address it, and the plan and the strategy to successfully achieve that goal. If it falls short, then I hope that this body, the Congress, can work with the President to bring about the necessary steps to give us every opportunity to succeed in this challenging task. I hope we don't have to come to that point. I hope we can unite. I will look forward to carefully examining the proposal, and I trust that we will be receiving, at last, leadership from the President of the United States and his team in terms of addressing what I think is a major crisis that cannot wait cannot be managed, cannot be classified as hoping that something will work out. The world is yearning for leadership. On matters of foreign policy, it looks to the United States, and it looks to the leader of the United States. We need to restore their confidence that we are taking this threat seriously, that we are engaging in an effort to address this successfully. And so we wait with great anticipation for the remarks of the President that will occur tomorrow. Mr. President, with that, I yield the floor and note the absence of quorum.
The clerk